Well, Fanalysis takes the best analytics from fantasy football combined with the sports betting metrics to find you the best plays of the week. The man that finds all of those sharp angles is Geoff Sheasby, known on Twitter as Old Man Who Bets. And Geoff, your top plays of the week starts with the Steelers, 3.5-point home favorite to the Cleveland Browns. After 4 straight wins for Cleveland, do we maybe have to start taking them seriously?
I think absolutely, Steve. You look at this line at -3. The only other corollary we have so far of division opponents against the Browns this year is opening week 1 versus the Ravens, where they got absolutely slaughtered. So the fact that Vegas is keeping this line so close against another team that's tied for the divisional lead, I think showcases that that they should be taken seriously. And we look at their offense here; they're firing on all cylinders. They won their first 4 games in a row since 2009. They've put up more than 30 points in 4 games in a row for the first time since 1968, which, quite frankly, is a pretty long time, right? But this offense has looked very impressive. But the defensive challenge in those games has been relatively suspect. Indianapolis, for sure, good defense, but they also played Cincinnati. They also played Dallas. They also played Washington. Washington defense, of course, improved, but the Washington offense puts them in tough scenarios so many times that obviously Cleveland was able to exploit that. So, we're looking at a team here that's 14th in offensive efficiency, which, based on how many points they've scored, you'd think would be a little bit better, and a defensive efficiency of 17th. So they're coming to this game facing a division rival, and 2, the best defense that they might see all year. So I don't know if they can put up more points than they have. You look at Pittsburgh here. Their offensive efficiency, without the hype, without OBJ, without all the fanfare that Cleveland is starting to bring here, 13th. So these offenses are going toe-to-toe. But the X factor here for me is going to be Pittsburgh defense. They're currently ranked 7th in terms of defensive efficiency, 4th in terms of opponents' yards per play, 6th in terms of opponent points per game. And that's going to be, I think, an uphill battle for Cleveland. On the other side of the ball, of course, we've got Big Ben. He's looked great, back-to-back, multiple touchdown games. He's thrown 10 touchdowns, only 1 interception on the year. And they're absolutely loaded at wide receiver. We've got Claypool last week, who's gone off for 3, should have been 4 on a bad OPI call. So, we look for deltas, in between stats. I think the biggest one is going to be defense versus defense here. I think Pittsburgh defense is too much, and I think they'll cover this game at -3.
Okay, so when you're breaking down the data of the matchups, do you look more at what's happening on the field, or maybe how important this game is for either team? Is it too early in the season to be looking at that?
It's hard to always gauge motivation in the NFL. And we'll talk about the Giants here in a second. And they've bamboozled me 3 weeks in a row, looking and playing up, playing down, playing up, playing down. But both these teams should be at peak motivation. You've got the Steelers who are playing, I believe, Tennessee next week. But they can't look past that. This is a huge game for the division. They always play each other close. What I see on the field versus what I see in the data, that's the difference between art and science. It's always a blend of that. But I think both these teams have looked good, so they both passed the eye test. That's the art. So I'm relying on the science here of the data and really trying to exploit that delta between defensive efficiencies.
The Patriots are giving 10 points to the Broncos in this game. Cam Newton is expected to be back for this game. Is Cam, I guess, the perfect antidote, the perfect tonic in the post-Brady era at New England?
I mean, it seems like it, Steve. We talked about this a couple weeks ago, but, Jacoby Brissett won that game against the Texans back in 2016 with Jeff with McDaniels, not Jeff McDaniels, but McDaniels, our offensive coordinator. Jeff, a great actor, no doubt. But if you look at optimizing Jacoby Brissett to the absolute extreme, you get Cam Newton. So this is an offense that they've kind of been working on for years. And a couple of fun facts. We've got Belichick coming off a loss. He's 38-11 in his career through 2018. I don't have the most up-to-date stat there, but off that loss and coming off a bye, he's 14-5. So we checked both of those boxes, even though it was an impromptu bye this week. And, of course, Cam Newton's back. Cam Newton's COVID-free. Cam Newton has looked great as a Patriot so far. So, we look at the other side of the ball. I think this is really where we need to be focusing. We've got Drew Lock back at home, or back healthy. But, in his entire career, I think he's been all hype. And quite frankly, I don't really see it yet. Last year he led the Broncos to a 4-1 streak to close out the year. And then, of course, was named the starter. John Elway put his faith in him. But let's unpack that 4-1 for a moment here, Steve. He threw over 300 yards only once in those 4 games. Those other 4 games, he averaged 177 yards per game. That's pretty mediocre. The teams that he beat last year, the 7-9 Raiders, the 5-11 Chargers, the 3-12-1 Lions, and then obviously had a good win against the 10-6 Texans, excuse me. But worth noting, they were up 38-3 in the first half, and then got outscored 21-0 there. So, we come into this year, and he's played one game where he threw for 216 yards. They covered against the Titans in Week 1, but Gostkowski missed 4 kicks that game to keep the game close. So where's the hype there? I don't really get it. This is a Denver offense that's 30th in offensive efficiency. Obviously, they had some backups. Their defense is pretty good. And I think the other side of the ball, both of the Patriots numbers are actually deflated from where they should be. Their offensive efficiency is 19th, but that's really lacking in the passing side, 24th in passing, but 3rd in rushing. And we haven't really seen a game the Patriots needed to pass yet. Maybe the Chiefs last week, but without Cam Newton there, not apples to apples. Their defensive efficiency is 21st, which also is pretty alarming when you consider that they had control of the game last week, with their backup and double backup QB for most of it. So I think when we really boil it down on the New England side, we're seeing a defensive efficiency of 21st. We're seeing an opponent points per game of 12th. So it's a classic Patriots bend, don't break kind of a stat sheet there. And then, of course, we need to take into account opponents. Who have the Patriots played so far? Miami, which was a whatever game, but they held them to 11 points. Seattle, one of the best offenses in the league. The Raiders, who they did beat handily, but that's an offense that's been balling and just beat the Chiefs. And then they contained the Chiefs on offense to only 26 points there. So they've played high-octane offenses almost every week so far. So while the defensive efficiency stats don't add up, that's the science here. I'm relying a little bit more on the art here. I think Vegas putting that line at -10 really showcases that this team should continue to throttle. They should continue to get better. This defense should be improving. This offense should continue to move the ball. And again, I just don't see it in Drew Lock. Of course, when you come out with a take like this, he'll probably watch this clip and then go off. But I don't see it. I want New England -10. Belichick off that loss. Belichick off that bye. Cam Newton healthy. Damian Harris looked fantastic last week. 17 carries for over 100 yards. And of course, James White is back after such a tragedy that happened with his parents. So I think this is a Patriots team that's fully loaded, ready to rock with an extra week of rest. I think they're going to be firing on all cylinders.
You said that you have been bamboozled by the Giants in the past. But here's the thing. They were always the underdog. Now, all of a sudden, they're 2.5-point favorites. Are you going to be bamboozled by the Giants this week against Washington?
I'm coming back for more, Steve. If first you don't succeed, try again. And, for the New York Metro audience out there, I'm trying to find some love the Giants here, and I think we finally found it, right? We talk about this bamboozling. I thought they'd get throttled week 1 and week 2. They played, pretty gritty efforts against the Steelers, against the Bears, and against both LA and Dallas last week. So 4 out of 5 of these efforts have been pretty good. Of course, they got slaughtered by, the 49ers, who had their backups in. But when you think about the Niners and their backups, they're pretty good. Jeff Wilson Jr. and Jerick McKinnon are almost as good as Coleman in most starts. So that wasn't too big of a downgrade there. And as you said, Steve, they're finally favored here. -2.5, first-time favorite all year. This is a Washington football team that, 1, doesn't have a full name, and 2, is starting a backup quarterback. So, when we go under the hood a little bit, 1, I think narrative is there. 2, data. We've got defensive efficiency. The Giants are 32nd in the league. Offensive efficiency, 32nd in the league. Washington is 31st in the league. So no upside there from either of these teams. But, you look at yards per play, we've got the Giants at 29th and Washington at 32. Perhaps that's enough. It's only 2.5 points that we need to cover here. Defensive side of the ball, a bit of a mixed bag. We're seeing Washington 4th in defensive efficiency, but 21st in opponent points per game. I think that should be more of an indication of where this defense is heading. Vice versa, the Giants are 16th in terms of efficiency, 11th in terms of opponents' yards per game, 18th in terms of opponents' points per play. So I think they're right where they should be. I think this Giants defense has been playing well against good teams. They should continue to play well against a division rival and a division that is truly wide open, more so than ever, especially with Dak going down in Dallas. So small line, the Giants favored. You don't see that too often. I think that actually shows strength, even though it is a small line. I'm looking for Danny Dimes to get the Giants in the win column here and hopefully cover.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Jets, because Vegas has tended to give them a little bit more breathing room. The spread continues to expand week after week, no matter who they're going up against. It's now 9.5 against a 2-3 Miami Dolphins team. What, does Vegas not see the value of having an experienced quarterback and an experienced running back?
Yeah, Steve. I mean, experienced running back and experienced quarterback, but neither of them can move the ball. Frank Gore, love the guy. He's an absolute grinder out there, but he's just not what he once was. He's even struggling in the short yardage. So, I think the wind in sails continues. Our course remains. We continue to fade the Jets. This team is in free fall, quite frankly. Not only are they 0-5 against the spread, but and shout out to my man Max for this stat, they haven't been covering by an average of 10.9 points per game. The Jets haven't been favored outside of maybe the Denver game, but that line was all over the place. So we expected them to have a pretty large point differential, but not covering by close to 11 points is honestly eye-opening. It's astounding, and it's an insane stat. Darnold's out. The lines aren't moving. Flacco, obviously not that big of an improvement. The veteran presence, great in the locker room, not equating to points. This is a Jets offense that's 28th in terms of offensive efficiency, no change week over week. Defensive efficiency has dropped dramatically. They were 10th last week. They're now 25th. So probably resembling a little bit more of what we expected in the preseason. And again, we got the Dolphins at 9.5. Let me say that one more time for you, Steve. The Dolphins are favored by 9.5. This is a team that's always been, fighting. Ryan Fitzpatrick is always good for a couple of good efforts, and they just got a fantastic one from him last week, as they blew out, who was it, the 49ers. But, you even look at week 2 or week 3 when they played the Bills, that was a very close game. That was a winnable game for the Dolphins as well. So we look at Fitzpatrick, we look at his stats. He just threw 350 yards and 3 TDs, completing 78.6% of his passes. That's super impressive, and that's against a defense that's way better than this Jets squad. You look at his season stats, honestly, they're a little pedestrian. He has got 7 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, but all 5 of those interceptions came in 2 games where he didn't throw any touchdowns. That means all 7 of those touchdowns came in 3 games where he threw no interceptions. I think he's really starting to vibe with Preston Williams, of course, with Devontae Parker. Their running backs, a workhorse in Gaskins, which nobody really expected. But this is an offense that can sling the rock. Fitzpatrick is literally fearless. He'll do what it takes to get us there. The Miami defense, of course, leaves a lot to be desired, but I think the Jets offense leaves more on the table. So I'm going to ride the big line. I'm going to take the strength that Vegas is giving us and really hammer home 1 unit at a time, the Miami Dolphins.
And another week where you ride Fitzmagic. Thank you so much for your insights on this. For Geoff Sheasby, I'm Steve Overmyer. Thanks for watching Fanalysis.